So it's the runners up, but with no Mitch. We're without Mitch today. Family emergency, but he'll be back. He'll still have to edit this because that's what he does. But today's guest, Jeff Dykeman. Jeff, first things first, just thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm really excited because your world, as we're going to go through over the next little bit, is this weird intersection of kind of a lot of what I do as well. It's like it's super weird how we've crossed paths here. I knew John Epping, who's one of your clients, since I was a kid because we curled together. But we also both went to Brock at different times. You're a SPEMA grad. But now what you've done is you've gone from working in the golf industry, and you've worked your way up the golf industry till finally you said, I guess I know enough people and I'm going to do my own thing now. And you've got your own management company. And that's where this other cross section comes too, is I do stand-up comedy, and you've got like Gerry Dee is on your roster. I mean, James Duthie isn't a comedian per se, but he's got some of that persona.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you've got a really weird web that kind of crosses through my life a lot, but yet we've never met. So just, I guess, tell me a bit of your story, man.
Oh, where do we start? I don't want to bore your
No,
audience.
it's not boring. It's not boring.
Yeah, I don't know where to start actually. It's I'm an 05 Brock grad. What year were you?
Oh, I went back as a mature student. I did business in my day, in my time, and then I went back and I did my master's was 2012. My undergrad was 2008, 2009. Uh-oh. Oh, I lost you for a sec. You're back.
There we go. Back.
You're back.
All I heard was masters. That was it.
Okay. So in 2012, I got my master. Actually, I'm looking at my diplomas there. I think it's 2012.
Diplomas. Good for you. Good for you. Wow.
In applied health, actually, Dr. Stevens, you might know her. The hockey. Yeah, she was my thesis advisor. So
cool.
And then I think 2010, I think was or 08 was my undergrad. But yeah.
They actually, Brock's been great to me, and I've been back there a lot with different advisory board and council stuff. And they actually gave me an award a couple years ago for some
awesome.
applied health sciences thing. But it was funny because you look around the room and it was like, somebody over here who's curing something, and someone over here who's invented something else, someone over here who's done this, and it's like, oh, here's Jeff, sports guy, and they're going to get this award. And it was just, you almost feel a bit kind of sheepish that they're doing some things that really, really, really matter, and you're doing things that are really fun, but matter obviously on a different scale. But it's anyway, I wouldn't change a single day that I spent at Brock. It was awesome. It was an awesome 4 years for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's competitive, eh? Because you'll probably know, there's so many people that go through like SPEMA. They don't have the fortunate life to be working in the industry.
It's amazing. You know what, man? It's when I was there, it might have been like a 75 average to get in. Yeah. And now it's I think it's like 88 or something like that, something crazy. It's like our last meeting we had, I think it's the most applied to program in Ontario.
Really?
Which is crazy. I mean, it's the only big one already in Canada, but it's I never would have got in. I didn't have those kind of marks in high school. There's no chance I would have never got in. So it just kind of, but it's always changed a lot. But it's funny how even my graduating class, say there's 65 or 70 students, there might be 4 working in sports still.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone who's there has made it big, right? But
yeah, the ones who made it and survived, they've done well. People have done well that have stayed, but most people become teachers or cops or like marketing people or agency people. Like it's crazy what they turned into. But it was a good time. It was funny. It was that 4-year span. I know this is a deep dive into Brock University sport management, but it was that 4-year span of like internet coming on board in a big way for people, and like email address. Remember, like the first year being there, it was like you can only have one internet source. We don't trust internet sources. Then like by year 4, it was like you can only have internet sources. No, like there's no out-of-date books allowed. Everything was so, especially in that program, it was so live. It was so like everything had to be up to date. It was like you were talking about things that were really cool to me. Was that it was talking about like the latest deal which went down with like I remember when Air Canada got the deal with the now Scotiabank Centre, in Toronto. when the ACC, that was a whole thing for us about like how much did they pay for it and what was it worth and how do you value that? And so it was kind of cool where other people I went to school with, they were taking classes in like psychology, and I was like, that sounds so boring compared to what we're doing. But yeah, it was great. But yeah, so Cole's Notes, just 4 years there, and then was always working in golf my whole life and playing golf, and not in any capacity of trying to be a golfer. Like I was a pretty good player. I was just my buddies were really good players, so which actually helps keep you in line where you're
Keeps you
you're shooting
modest.
like you're shooting some pretty good scores and your buddies are smashing you. And some of my friends were some of the best players in the province, so it was like you have no chance to ever play golf. So like, oh, I just really enjoyed the business of sports and just kind of being around the game. And so when I went to the PGA, I happened to be there for just some weird things happen. Like I've had a lot of good luck go my way, and I've also maybe kind of made it go my way as well. But a lot of luck has gone my way with different things, like just when I went there, they say you can sit over here in the corner, have your own kind of corner spot to sit, or you can sit over here beside Carolyn, who's been here for 45 years, is going to retire in about a year from now, and she talks a lot and the whole deal. I'm like, I'll sit beside her.
Yeah.
And I picked that seat, and so I sat there, and every day, all day, she would just tell me, the phone would ring, and she would just say, "Oh, you won't believe who that was, Jeff," and she'd tell me everything. And so when I would go to meetings and someone would be like, "Oh, what's so and so doing now?" And say, "Oh, that person's now the head pro of this golf course." And they'd say, "How do you know that, Jeff?" I just know. And they thought I was smarter than I was because I was just listening better than everyone else was, right? So access, totally, right? So stuff like that kind of happened in my life, and I won't go through all the dominoes, but it was just stuff like that where you just kind of the right place, right time, and you just had a chance to kind of show that you were reading or listening, and I was able to do that a few times in a row. And then I always tell, I've been speaking a lot of classes over the years, and I always tell some students, especially in sport management, they always want to go work at the Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, right? It's the biggest and it's the strongest and it's the coolest. But you become intern number 76 that year, and or intern number 1 million for the last 10 years. And so I went to the PGA, and it was like they only had 6 or 7 staff at a head office, and it was like, okay, well, Jeff, can you do that and do that and do that? And you're almost like, I don't know how to do that. And they're just like, well, figure it out. And so you just do it, and all of a sudden, when you finish that year, like, oh my God, I've done so many things that my peers were only like at the front desk, like answering ticket phone calls, and I was doing way more things and going to meetings I should never ever been invited to. And so that kind of helped me, kind of accelerate a bit. And then after that, like everything's come out of golf in some capacity. The curling stuff, I can tell you there's some good stories about the curling stuff, or Gerry Dee or James Duthie. It's all come out of golf, despite not being tied to golf and intentionally. And then after I was at the PGA for 14 years, which is like unheard of. Like PGA, that office cycles through a lot of people. They used to in the old days, and we kind of helped turn it around. And then my former boss, who's now retired, he thought I was going to leave on my own volition, and he kind of pulled me in and said, "I'm going to retire in a couple of years. I think you're going to leave. So like, what can we do here?" And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of thinking about my own thing." And one of my buddies, Ben Cowan-Dewar, who owns and runs Cabot Links in Nova Scotia, which is a phenomenal place. Even a non-golfer, it's worth just looking at. He's the kind of guy that if you're on the fence of a certain idea, he'll push you right over and you'll fall on your face in a good way. But he's just the kind of guy, like, if he thinks he can do it, he's all over you. And he was all over me. And so, so we made a deal with the PGA to kind of work together to help me still handle their national partnerships, but also, branch out and do my own thing. And if you had told me, that was 3 years ago, if you told me 3 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, working with who I'm working with, I would never believe it.
But that must be a huge, I want to say it's a safety net, but getting that first big contract that kind of, you're like, all right, this is real, and I know I've got this, now I can go work on, instead of just going out clean, right?
It's huge though. Like it's a great word for it. It's a word I also use, safety net, but it's also, there's a risk, right? I mean, I had totally. years, and so when I made the move, you have to make an agreement with the association to say, okay, we're gonna cut my salary, in half, or we're gonna have a totally different deal here, and now I'm not an employee anymore, so you lose your benefits that you had, and I remember telling my wife, and she's looking at me like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not really sure, but I think this is the next step in the evolution here, so let's try it." And she's got a good job, which helps. And I always kind of call her, it's a sports analogy, like crazy over here, but I always I call her the stay-at-home defenseman for us. So she kind of, she's got the nice setup, and it's a good job, and not too many risks, or not as many risks in her world as my world. So but that was a big jump, and people thought I was crazy for sure when I first did it, and when the dominoes fell, luckily pretty quickly.
So your first, like you've done your PGA thing, and now your first client or customer in your new management company is the PGA.
Yeah.
So what do you do as a management company? Like, you bring brands to the client?
Yeah, it depends who they are. I mean, everyone's different, and we do probably about 5 different things, or whether it's marketing stuff, or it's brand, advice, or it's consulting, or it's speaking engagements, or endorsement deals, or you name it type thing. So depending on who it is and who they are, they want different things. Somebody might want one of those things. Someone want like 5 of those things. It depends on kind of, who they are and what they do. So for the PGA, it's, trying to get national partnerships and arrange better deals for them, their benefits, helping with their championships. We do a huge event that I helped invent over there with the RBC PGA Scramble, which is a phenomenal event for amateur golfers, and become a huge machine over there. And then Cabot Links was my second partner, and with them, we're doing a lot of stuff with them corporate wise and big events. And then it all kind of fell out of, there's a guy named Rod Spittle who's from Niagara Falls.
I know
Rod
the
Spittle
name.
is a phenomenal story.
But I know the name.
Everyone should know. Like, it's one of those like unheralded stories. But he was Canada's greatest golfer when he was 18, 19, 20 type thing, and he's from that area, Niagara Falls, and he's 65 now. This was late 70s, and so he went to school, Ohio State, big golf school. He was the Ohio State golf captain, and he was there. And anyone who's at that level, apparently he was unbeatable in university against guys who are now Hall of Fame PGA Tour players. And he was going to go to try and qualify for the tour, and then sat back and said, you know what? And he met a girl, want to start a family, got offered a great job there, and said, I'm not going to go. And the guys all there said, well, if you're not going to go, then we should just get a real job too. And he said, no, you guys go, and I'll meet you out there in 30 years in the senior tour. And they thought, okay, whatever. So 30 years later, this guy works on his game for 30 years, sells insurance for 30 years, raises three or four kids, at 3, I think it is. And then he turns pro at 50, which is like, doesn't happen.
No.
And then so he goes out there, he quits his job, his wife quits her job. They try and chase the tour, which costs a lot of money. Like, people have no idea. To chase the tour, basically you go and you try and qualify on a Monday. And if you don't qualify, they just go, thanks for your money, see you next Monday. And you try and do it again. And you just drive from city to city, which could be 8 hours away or 12 hours away, or it could be a week off. So you have to wait it out for 2 weeks in the middle of nowhere. And he did this, and he parlayed that into, he had a 5-year plan. And his 5-year plan was going to be, if he doesn't win an event in 5 years, they're just going to try it up to a great experience and say, it was fun, but we're not going to waste all the family's money. And 5 years, later, his final event of his 5-year plan, he wins in a playoff. And he wins in a playoff. And he actually, if you're a golfer, he marked his ball, and then other guy had to putt, so he had to move his ball out of the way, marked it. But you have to move your mark back to that same spot before you putt again, or you're disqualified, or you get a penalty, which would have been he would have lost the playoff. And his brain, I'm sure, was just haywire, so he forgot to. And the guy who's playing against said, don't forget about your spot. And so he moved his spot back, and he beat that guy, thanks to that guy saying, put your spot back. Anyway,
but I love that stuff.
Yeah, and it's funny because his name was Jeff Sluman, who's a Hall of Fame golfer, and because they're so close, Spittle and Sluman, they had lockers together for the rest of the next 10 years. Anyway, so Rod took that event, got his full-time status, and played for the next 13 years and won close to $5 million. And he had 25 top 25s and a bunch of top 10s. And anyway, so I met him over the years. We had one event per year on the PGA of Canada circuit, and seniors event that he play every year. And so I was pondering, I said, you know what, maybe I should get into representing some people, some cool people. I think need some help, and a lot of people don't have representation. And I thought maybe I'll talk to Rod and see, so I put in my calendar to call Rod on a Friday afternoon. And I'm going to call him and just talk to him and see I know he had 3 or 4 years left. And so I got a phone call that next morning from Rod. The Friday morning, I had a phone call, unprovoked, from Rod. Calling me, and he's checking up, and I'm thinking, this is where I was going to call this guy. Anyways, we're just talking. He goes, I saw your press release. You got your own company going here. I got a question for you. And Rod's the nicest man on the planet. He would never even, he almost feels bad about calling you to ask this, but he's like, would you ever consider working with me? Like, I'm not big enough for you or whatever. And I'm thinking like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I was going to call you in 4 hours, ask you the same question. And he's like, well, I guess we got a deal. And I'm like, I guess we do. And so that started the whole thing. Without Rod Spittle, I don't think anything else happens in a way, because he and I worked together for the next 3 or 4 years, had a pretty good run there. And he got put into the Canadian Golf Hall of Fame last year. And he helped turn it on, because then, Gerry Dee kind of saw that. Gerry's a big golfer, saw I worked with him. We crossed paths at a tournament in Bermuda and kind of hung out there for a few days and talked about Rod. And then Gerry's like, hey, you know what? I've had people before that have worked with me, and, I'm doing my own thing now, but I'd love to work with you if you want to work with me. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't I? Right. So then I was just like, and there hasn't been really any of myself seeking out other people to work with. It's just been kind of somewhat serendipity, or somewhat kind of
organic.
Yeah, a little bit where you kind of cross paths and kind of hit it off. And I haven't really asked them, and they haven't really asked me. It's kind of been just sort of just the way it's worked out. Yeah,
there's a I guess it's a business, but kind of like a leadership philosophy, right? About like the first follower, right? To be a good leader, you need the first follower. So Rod's your first follower that bought in, and then it allows everybody else to buy in, right?
Well, and it's so funny that I was at Brock. I remember when I started working with Gerry Dee, my buddies were like, oh my God, Gerry Dee. And
I love Gerry Dee. He's so funny.
You know what? And people like, he's even funnier. He's even nicer and funnier when you get to know him pretty well. And like he's so creative, and like people forget the fact that this guy's on all the time. And he's also a very smart businessman. And he's also like works his tail off. Like this guy has got more ideas in a day than more people that I've met. And what was funny is that back to Brock, I remember being at Brock. I told Gerry this and we laughed. I remember going to Brock back when he had his Gerry Dee Sports Reporter stuff, which was on the Score at the time.
On the Score,
it was 01 to 05. And back then, no PVR, right? So barely even technology. We had wires going. We had no Wi-Fi. You had wires going through your house in order to wire your house, right? Which is a terrible fire hazard. But I remember like it would come on, and guys would just yell in our house, be like, "Get down here! He's on again!" And they're yelling at us, and we'd run down so we don't miss Gerry Dee Sports Reporter. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, now I'm working with the guy, the same guy who I was a big fan of, and I'd go to his shows and pay full pop to watch him, and thought it was great value in the whole deal. And so to work with him now is pretty cool. Like everyone I'm working with now, with James Duthie and Jana Hefford and Natasha Stanishevsky and Jennifer Jones, like all these people I'm working with who are super talented and also great people. I kind of have the Rod Spittle barometer there, where Rod Spittle's the nicest man literally on earth, like on earth. I'm not kidding at all. Like
I believe you.
Like and like every time you see someone write an article on him, it's always like comment sections. Always like I met that guy at this event, nicest guy on the planet. Like he's unbelievable. That I kind of try to hold everybody that same standard a bit. That obviously be uniquely skilled, but also be a great human as well, which everyone seems to be. That and hopefully I think the same about me, which is nice. But yeah, it's been without Rod, I don't know what happens for sure.
It is one of those things I would assume for you, because you're in you tell me if I'm wrong here, but you would probably get into some tense business type situations with all your clients. So you have to have that level of maybe not even respect, like respect fits as well. But like you said, when everyone's genuinely a nice person, if your roster is people that you genuinely believe are nice people, it's easier to have those tough conversations when it's not like someone's not going to get hurtful. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Like you still have a few kind of things where you don't agree, you don't see eye to eye. They think they might, the deal you cooked for them isn't as good as it should have been, or vice versa. And you think they should have done more, but we have very few of those. And I think for some people, I've actually turned down a lot of people in the last couple of years. A lot of times it's because I think their value prop of themselves is off. And I think we all think we're better than we are.
Yeah.
Typically, right? If we have some confidence, you think you're better than
you are. Sell yourself high, right?
Right. Or you think you're worth more than you're worth, whether it's to your employer or whatever. And I think some people, they'll forget that. Sometimes people forget that it's a business for me too, right? So like for me, it's got to make business sense for me. So if I'm gonna run down and chase deals for different people, I want it to be of value for them and for me. that if someone's asking me, will you take me on? And you say, well, how much are you typically paid for an appearance or a gig? And I say, well, I haven't been paid ever in my life before. A bit of a tough spot. Or if they or even worse,
your percentage of zero is still zero.
Right, exactly, right. Or if they think that they are worth $100,000, and you think they're actually worth, you actually know that their market value or street value is worth 25. If you bring them $25,000 deals, they're going to say, this is terrible, Jeff, you suck. And they're going to tell all their friends that you suck. And meanwhile, they're just off, right? And I think so there's a bit of that going on too. So I think it's just making sure you have people who understand and kind of get it and realize, where they're at. But you still get some of those, especially now with the COVID stuff going on. I mean, you've got to, reverse engineer some deals too, where you've got to say, you had a deal in place and now we may not have as many things we can offer you. So how do we rejig these deals? So you have to it's nicer when people are very happy with your clients, or they're happy with you, that they say, you know what, let's work this out so it's good for all of us, and let's make sure this is a long view as opposed to a short view. But yeah, I find a lot of people in this space, in my world, play that whole tough guy or tough girl role a lot. It's kind of funny. It's kind of, I'm not sure why, but I've had a lot of good feedback in the last few years of people being like, wow, you're fast at replying to things, and you're also reasonable, or you're also, good to work with. And that's gone a long way. And that's kind of what my parents helped kind of ingrain that on me a bit, but it's also how I try to operate. But a lot of people in my world don't. And I think they might get the best deal one time, but I might get a better deal 10 times in a row.
Then the bridge is burned, right?
Yeah, and I'm pretty good at math. Usually 10 times is worth more than one time.
Yeah, and I mean, not always with everyone, but you hope people's value increases over time, right? So you give them a good deal, and then if you got Gerry Dee to speak somewhere in 2004, well, guess what? You're paying more now.
Yeah, like people forget that too. Like there's some funny stories of people like that people forget that Gerry is a big star now. Like, and you kind of,
was what, the biggest in Canada?
One of the biggest,
Canadian made? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And 8-year run there, and now Family Feud Canada, and you're hard pressed to find somebody who can do what he does. And he's a great host of events, and he's hilarious. He can be the one person entertainer, or he can be the whole show for the 3 hours of a gala dinner. And he's one of the most sought after entertainers in the country. Like if he was American and he was in the U.S., it would be bonkers. Yeah. Like Canada's, but if he was in the U.S., we're talking like, Chris Rock levels type thing. Like it's that sort of, and I'm I'd say better because he's a little more polished, and a little more, he's a little more of a family, person type thing. Right. So I think, but people forget that, some of these people have become, they're well sought after, and it's a business for them too. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's just one aspect, right? So you've talked like Gerry Dee, James Duthie, those like speaking engagement type stuff. And even, I guess, Rod probably does. Actually, I guess looking through your roster, except for the courses themselves, everyone, I guess, could be doing speaking engagements. But like you said, that's just part of what you do, right? Like there's all sorts of different aspects in terms of, getting a sponsor badge put on someone's jacket, putting a decal on some stage ornament at a show. I don't know, but there's a lot of different aspects to what you're doing.
There's tons of things, DJ. It's so funny. It's even stuff like, with the curling stuff. I mean, and the story there, it's funny. I can't give away all my secrets, but the story there is I work with Brent Lang, who then was a curler. Okay. Brent Lang is a phenomenal curler. Right? He's probably going to be the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and Brent Lang, should be whenever he's still pretty young, but I keep telling him this. I want him to play longer, so I keep telling him he's pretty young. But so Brent Lang and I worked at a golf course called Heron Point, which is near Ancaster, where I'm from. And I worked with nice catch. And I worked with Brent, 20 years ago, late high school, and he and I kind of hit it off, played golf kind of all summer. And Brent, pretty humble guy, didn't mention anything about curling. I remember going to university.
And 20 years ago, he was winning worlds.
Oh yeah, and I remember going to university, and my roommate was into curling, and he's watching curling, and I'm like, I know that guy on TV there, and he's like, no, you don't. I'm like, no, I do. He's like, what's his name? Is his name Brent Lang? He's like, yeah. He's like, he's a curler. And he's like, I'm like, and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I worked with a guy all summer. This summer, I played golf with him like 20 times, and he's like, he didn't tell you he's a curler? And I'm like, no. I'm like, that's weird. Fast forward 20 years later, I got a like DM or call from Brent, and we hadn't really talked. We had the I think I sent him a text or DM just saying, "Hey, congrats on the Olympics" or whatever it
Yeah.
was. And so he calls me and says, "Hey, I'm not sure if you want to. I'm not sure if you want to work with us. But we're going to form a super team." And we kind of had this move going on. We're going to, which I think it's funny now in curling because it's like there's no commissioner, there's no
Nope.
GM. It's just like this like wild west of like changing teams, right? So it's kind of funny. There should be a trade deadline at a free agent frenzy. Maybe they will one day.
Well,
But they
the point system does kind of stick teams together because you lose your points now if you don't keep 3 of them. But yeah, it's the Wild West. It's crazy.
Yeah. So the super team, and they said, "Hey," I'm like, "You know what, Brent? Thanks for thinking of me, but honestly, I'm not a big curling guy. I've never curled in my life. I don't like to watch it. You know, I said I'm pretty much sold out anyways. I'm too busy, but I'm like, send me all the stuff. Like, send me some of your numbers and what you're getting, and some of the TV stuff, and I'll check it out." So he emailed it to me like an hour and a half later. I called him back in 1 minute, and I was like, "I'm in," because I could tell in a hurry. I'm like, this is so underpriced. This is so undervalued. Like, people have no idea how
Curling
big
drives me psycho.
It's crazy, man.
I'm a curler. I don't work in curling, but every time their TV contracts drive me nuts.
It's wild.
Like, they're getting better than CFL numbers. The Briar's getting over $1 million for a Tuesday 2 p.m. game.
Oh yeah.
And they're not getting any money.
Yeah, it's like even stuff like they usually outduel like Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah.
Back when like Don Cherry was on, like Saturdays, like some of these events were massive, right? And
out west.
And so when I saw it, I was like, sign me up, right? So I got involved with them and have helped them in a few different ways, and they've been great. And we're working together, and they're just, now my wife laughs. I'm down in the basement yelling, like swearing at the TV, and she's like, "What are you yelling at downstairs?" I'm not a big yeller, and I'm yelling at the TV. She's like, "What are you yelling?" I'm like, "Curling." And she was like, "What? Curling?" And here, like, a guy who never watched curling is now like glued to the TV and just loving the way. And I obviously, as a sponsor guy, I love the way the logos are
right on the
shown,
knee, right on the knee
man.
when
so
they slide.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a good spot. And so it's been nice, I think, for them, somebody like me who does this. A lot of people in my kind of world haven't had my background. So quite a few of them come through the ranks, they become agents, and they've got a background of whatever it is, but it's not typically somebody who's gone out and secured sizable deals for sponsors in the corporate world and then become an agent. It's almost like they almost get their feet wet as an intern and kind of stay there forever and just do agency stuff, but they haven't really. So I think it's been a bit of an advantage for me. A bit is that I've had so many corporate contacts already. I'm not trying to find the contact or trying to make a introduction. It's just me calling up somebody who I know might be a fit, and they're saying, "Hey, Jeff, what's up?" And they're kind of they're interested in hearing what I'm talking about. And especially if they're not curlers, like, "Oh, tell me more about this. Is crazy. I had no idea curling was so big," because no one's told the story corporately, right? It's just been players telling their friends or members of their clubs or whatever.
No, it's the people that put the money in, like the corporations, typically, historically, not for you, are people who someone near the top place.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. It happens a lot, right? So it's been nice that way. I think is that we've been able to kind of open. It still takes time. You still have to. You don't just walk into, somebody like Make It Up, one of the big banks, and they're going to just change their whole focus after your meeting to go from sponsoring golf full time or sponsoring hockey full time or sponsoring whatever full time, become curling. That's a huge titanic shift for a massive department in marketing to change their whole. So that's never going to happen unless they kind of like you knock on the door 15 times and it takes a few years. But it's easier with those middle level companies, I think, that are kind of like I don't know what you call them exactly, but they're companies that that aren't really attached to a certain thing. Like in Canada, Scotia's hockey and RDC's golf and TD's baseball, they all have their thing.
Yeah.
And they stay in their own lane. But you get below that kind of, that's the upper echelon. Get below that one, people can be pretty nimble and change. If they think something's a pretty good idea and pretty good deal and a pretty good sport to attach, they can change. So we've had a few of those get pretty close where people have been surprised if we pull the rabbit out of the hat and say, wow, that company is now sponsoring curling and sponsoring Epping at the time. It would have been. So we got that done with Live Relief, is their big sponsor now, which is a pretty big brand, and a brand that never touched curling in the past. So stuff like that's been happening for us, which is nice. But yeah, so it's funny how fast I jumped on the stuff with curling, and I've been amazed that, and the other now with Jennifer Jones, Jennifer's married to Brent Lang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I think Jennifer, and they've been doing stuff on their own for years. And one of the most famous teams of all time was Jennifer Jones, and they've been doing all their own stuff and doing it quite well actually. And they just kind of, I think Jennifer, I'm guessing, hopefully this is how it went down. Maybe I'm just pumping my own tires too much, but I think that maybe she was talking to Brent and maybe hearing Brent and I talk and being like, oh, this Jeff guy seems to care a lot about our team and he's helping us out, that maybe he'll help our team too, right? So now this is our first year on board with them. It's gonna be a tough year with the COVID stuff, but we're trying to be, smart and nimble and help them out and do that. But it's been, I've gone to a few events now. And I can't believe it. You walk out of a stadium down the street and people are pulling aside, Brent Lang and Jennifer Jones and Epping asking for autographs and selfies. And it is for real. Like it is for real.
Especially
it's fun to watch.
The Briar, the Scotties, like the slams are huge too.
Oh.
But the Briar, the Scotties, for wherever they are for that week, they're the rock stars in town. Like it's next level.
I know. It's unbelievable. It's really cool. It's really cool. And so it's been and my dad, who's had some health problems recently, before he had the health problems, he actually was one of the guys when I was talking about Brent and the team, and my dad was like, you got to do it. I'm like, why do I have to do it? And he's like, your life is golf heavy. Curling will give you a seasonal content. And I was like, this is genius. Because now
so many curlers golf because of that.
Yeah, big time. And now so it's been nice for having all that winter content. Whereas a company, if you're too heavy in the summertime, it's, you're a little slow. And wintertime's always busy for us anyway with meetings and trying to get deals done. But nice to have some public content too.
Yeah, and I don't know. I love like curling and golf have just kind of become this natural thing over the years. A lot of curlers are golfers. Like Mike Harris, I don't know if he still is. I don't think so, but he was a golf pro. Russ Howard was a golf pro, I think.
Yeah. Wayne Madaw, golf
Wayne
pro.
Madaw, Greg Ballston. There's so many.
The guy out west who plays on Cooey's team.
Jamie or Kevin?
Kevin.
He's got the lefty. I can't think of his name.
He's a competitor. Forget it.
Yeah.
No, he's a golf pro too. There's a lot of, and Brent Lang was actually a PJ professional for a year and a half or 2 years, and then he kind of switched gears there. And Brent has a great story about sometimes he kind of, people who are in curling, they're probably, it's kind of a tough little. Some people are famous across the board. Some people are famous inside their pond, I guess, or lake, whatever you want to call it. But so Brent has a good story about, I think he was at an event in Barrie golf tournament, and some guy comes by and says to him, hey Brent, or not, hey Brent, like, so comes over and says, hey, you know what, you look familiar. And Brent's like, well, yeah, maybe. And he's like, do you curl? And the guy's like, no, I don't curl. He's like, do you watch curling on TV? No, it's not curling. And Brent's thinking like, what the hell? Like usually people say that to him, they're curlers, right?
Yeah.
And he says, no, wait a minite. I think you spray my lawn every Wednesday.
Oh yeah, because he does weed man stuff. Yeah,
right. But so here's Brent thinking like, oh my god, he's thinking he's gonna get like a selfie request, and it's like, right? But they're great guys to work with, and it's been fun for sure.
But that's the truth about a lot of, like, if you're not in the big four sports, right? Like you can get paid. Like John is in a very unique spot as a professional curler. There's more money, and there's like Brad Goosh who does it now, and I think Mark, but they are business owners on the side as well.
Sure.
There are some people that do it, but being a professional curler, we're just on the precipice of that. That sport's not quite there yet.
No, I think there's obviously things at play, and I know enough to be dangerous in curling now. I've studied a lot of things, and the guys and now Jennifer and their team tell me a lot of things that to help me accelerate my knowledge. But there's some things probably at a way higher level that go on that could fix that a little quicker. That nobody wants to talk about, but I think
about them.
Well, I don't know enough about it, but I think stuff like the whole you have to wear your provincial jersey and not wear your team jersey. So like some of these massive
you lose all your sponsor money.
Oh yeah, so sponsor guy, I'm like, it drives me wild, right? But stuff like that, I think that And I think some of these sponsors could turn into, some of the team sponsors could turn into major, league sponsors. It's
Yeah,
just, I
there
think
is
just,
no league.
so I think stuff like that's been kind of, it's tough though, right? You're trying to do it all and but and every sport kind of goes through their own, it seems like every sport has an issue with their governing body for some reason, but I'm
Because
not
it's a
sure what everyone,
nonprofit governing body.
exactly. They're like, oh, I can do it better. Okay, volunteer for it then. Like, no,
Yeah.
I don't have time. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I think they'll keep getting there. I think, as you said, like John's in a great spot. John, but they also have John's heavy in his coaching stuff. He coaches overseas a lot.
Yeah.
Got his beer line now with the Epic Ale, which is great, and that's done quite well. And it's selling at curling clubs. That also, if you buy so many cases, you get John to come by, and John will do a clinic, whatever. And that's a big draw.
Yeah.
Like for people who want that. And we had the same thing. We did that with our title sponsor, Liverleaf. We had them go to Dundas Valley and do something there, and like they just loved it. Like they brought a bunch of clients in, and it's really cool, right? So I think that's it's gonna help them get to the next level. But is every team gonna be that way? I don't know. I mean, I think the top 2 or 3 might get to that spot where they can just have those flexible part-time jobs. But if you play well and you got some good sponsors, it's a good deal. But if you're relying on all that, you better play well. If you don't play well, the money's gone pretty fast.
But it's just like, it's almost just like anything though, right? Like looking at all of your clients. The reason they are your clients is because they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, right? Like James Duthie gets paid at TSN to do his TSN thing. He doesn't need you for that. He needs you because you're getting him another, talking engagement, because he doesn't want to have everything based on that. So the curlers are the same. The golfers are the same. The TV personalities are the same. They're trying to diversify like anybody.
Well, I think, and it's a good point. I think for all of them, they also don't know how long it's going to last, right? Like for some people, you never know. Like you never know if the next contract for anybody, all of a sudden that network is like, hey, we're out, or hey, like it's always tough to kind of, I think, and the golfers, like golf's a crazy finicky sport that maybe the golfers like, you know what, like I better work on my outside the rope stuff, because inside the ropes, if I don't play well, I'm gone. There's no security, right? Like you don't sign a 10-year deal in golf. You just play well or you don't play well. And no one's covering your cost.
Like curling and the other sports, it's weird, right? Like hockey, there's like that cliff, right? Like you can see the decline. Yeah. Curling, you can play for a long time. There is a decline, but you can like, it's not, but golf, someone could win and then just the wheels fall off and they can disappear like 6 months later.
Remember watching Tiger Woods there when he couldn't chip, and you're like, what's happening right now? This guy's the greatest player in the history of golf, and he can't chip properly. Like, it's frightening, actually. And then so many stories of I used to caddy a lot on the Canadian Tour, which is now the PGA Tour Canada, and with a bunch of different guys, and you'd see guys who were like lights out, who as a golf guy, you knew this guy has all the tools, he's got to make it. Never hear from the guy again. And other guys who you'd watch play are like, that guy's ball flight's terrible, that guy's swing is terrible, that guy's nutrition habits are terrible, and all of a sudden that guy makes it, and you're watching him. I still text my buddy sometimes and be like, can you believe that guy who we played with 12 years ago is still out there winning like $14 million, right? And it's just amazing. You never know. Golf's one of those sports where you don't get cut, right? Other sports, like a team cuts you, and if they pick you, they take you on for a while, and they on this journey of like, we'll pay for all your stuff. Like, I mean, Epping alone, he probably spends like, the team probably spends $10,000 alone in just flight changes a year.
Oh, probably.
Right? Like people have no idea the costs involved. Like Rod Spittle on tour, though, major dollars to even travel the tour, go to a spot for a week, always at pretty good markets and pretty good cities, then go over to like Japan and play, then go over here and play, then Pebble Beach, try going there and not spending $400 a night for a room.
Yeah.
American, right? Yeah. Like it's impossible, right? So like there's a lot of costs that go on that people have no idea.
No, and and I love to, like, people talk about, oh, this guy's getting paid $800,000 a year, right? And you're like, okay, well, he's getting taxed at 50%. His agent's taking 10. Whatever someone else is taking 10. Like he doesn't have that much more cash flow than. Oh, and he also has to eat out at steak restaurants with multi-millionaires twice a week.
Oh, I know. And I think people forget, like, and even all my clients, they all have real lives, right? Like they're just. Like, like Gerry's got 3 kids. Jenna Hefford's got 3 kids.
Yeah.
like Brent and Jennifer, they're married, they're on the road together, sometimes crossing paths on different events,
Yep.
and they've got 2 kids. Like everyone's got stuff to deal with, right? Families to deal with, and so like when someone's like, "Oh, can your client do this?" I'm like, "No, they can't." And I'm like, "Why not?" Like, "Well, they're busy with their kids or whatever." And
Yeah.
people sometimes, "Oh, well, come on," and just get a little uptight about it. But they're real people. Like they're just really really talented at something, but
Yeah.
they're real people that have real lives.
I think it's one of the, like, I don't get starstruck at all ever,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
anything. I've done some work in hockey in the Ontario Hockey League, and you see like Connor McDavid, whatever guys like that I've interviewed, and then, but I think a part of it comes from my curling experience, because as a kid I was around all these guys, but I was just playing with them. They were my friends, right?
sure.
Like, and then you see them on TV, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's John, right?
Yeah,
That's fine. It's just a person I know. Like,
it's funny how it works, and it's kind of, I mean, golf's kind of the same way, right? Where you play with people, and they're pretty much disarmed right away. Where it's kind of like, no matter how awesome you are at anything other than golf, does not translate to golf. So all of a sudden that person is like a huge celebrity in something, and all of a sudden we're on the same level for. So like I play with people, and I've always been a pretty good golfer, and not amazing, but pretty good. That I would just go play and have fun, and you talk, and I think just like that alone as I just even just talking to someone like a real person rather than
totally.
just like you sometimes see people come up and they'll ask, and they're just big fans, and they'll ask people certain questions about, oh, tell me your, like they'll say to Gerry, like, tell me your funniest joke.
The worst.
What what like this is a dead end, right? And like and
His
the stuff
funniest
like
joke is the bear licked the honey, though, by the way.
that joke
That's
is an all timer. It should be told more for sure.
yeah.
But like I think stuff like that, I think it's been that's part of my favorite too. Where I've been lucky enough to be around all different people, and a lot of times by accident. I just not sure why I end up in these settings over the years of my whole life, where I've just been around people who are on paper, I guess, famous, but and just kind of somewhat hit it off, and just and then kind of go from there, and not really be too pushy about anything. Just kind of go and hang out and play and whatever. And it's just seemed to work out a bit to kind of turning into a business, but there's no real plan for that.
People are human, right? Like everybody, good, bad, ugly, ups, downs. We all have bad days, good days, and
Yeah,
luckily, no one sees my bad days because I'm
right,
not on TV, right? And I
right.
didn't just lose some event and smash something,
Oh
or
yeah,
didn't want to do an interview after I just lost the Ontario final or the
I know.
prior, right?
I,
Like,
I've had people before come to me and be like, "Oh, I crossed with one of your clients I saw in the airport, and said hi, and all they said was hi back."
he doesn't
And I'll
know
say,
you.
and I'll say, "Did you say anything else?" "Well, no, I just said hi." "Well, you thought that like you approached them. It's not their task to then ask you the follow up question. It's kind of like you say hello, they say hi back, and that's it. And again, who knows? Maybe they're on the phone with their kids before they fly or whatever. Like we all have. I mean, we all travel enough in airports where I'm not the most approachable guy in the airports either. I'm kind of on the phone or I'm doing whatever and got my head down. If you're a stranger, if you say to me, "Hey Jeff," I'll say, "Oh hey," I'll talk to you, but I'm not going my way to kind of find new friends in the airport, right? So it's a bit of a funny mentality, and you see it now with the NHL stuff with the COVID, where guys are opting out, and mostly for
Yeah.
family reasons, and people are online, just hammering them, being like,
Touring them.
"Oh, this is a joke. You're bailing on the city," and like, it's bad, but it's funny the perception sometimes.
Some of these guys have like 4 months old at home, and they're gonna be told
Oh
you
my,
can't see your family for 6 months. You can't help your wife with your kids. Like, what are you talking? If
yeah,
I had money in the bank, I'd be like, no way.
I know. If you're like going this bubble and kind of just hopefully you survive, and you've got a brand new baby at home, and maybe you just love just being a dad. Period.
Yeah,
Like
you're
maybe
allowed to
hockey's
do
a great.
that.
There's guys that play hockey in NHL who like hockey but don't love it.
Yep, they're just real
They're
good.
really good at it, right? Like just
Yep.
I'm going to be real. Look at Brooks Koepka golf wise, who's phenomenal, who's just said publicly, golf was not my number one sport. I was happy. I be better at golf than I was at baseball or whatever it was.
Yeah,
And he's just like, and people are like, "Oh, this is what a terrible comment." He's just like, "No, I get paid a lot of money and I'm enjoying doing it. I'm not going to play every week. I'll play when I can and go from there." But yeah, it's
not
and you never
everyone loves being an accountant or a
exactly.
lawyer. They're
I
just good
know
at it, so you do it.
it's
Like,
and and people have like this real stuff. I remember a quick story. Scott Pritchard, who's a great friend of mine, and Scott, he actually runs the PGA Tour Canada now. And Scott and I worked together at the PGA 15 years ago, and he and I were at a bar in Toronto one time, and Scott's one of those guys that he and I have great memories. We never forget a face or a name. He's probably one step higher. I'm really good, and he's one step higher. But Scotty also gets mad if they don't reciprocate, if they don't remember who he is.
Oh, they have to remember him too.
Yeah, or I don't really care. I'm kind of like,
I'm the worst. So
right, yeah. But he's wondering like, how come they don't remember me? And I'm like, well, they're not really as good as we are remembering people, right? Anyway, so we were at a bar, and there's this guy there having a beer by himself, and we kind of walk over and look at me. He's like, that guy looks familiar. I'm like, yeah, he does. And he's like, let's go figure it out. So we go over there. I'm like, hey, buddy. I'm like, and Scott's like, oh, did you go to school at Ottawa where Scott went? And no. He's looking at us like we're complete weirdos, right? And I'm like, you go to school at Brock? He's like, what's Brock? And I'm like, oh, okay.
That's not it.
And then he's like, where are you? I'm like, you from Hamilton? No. And Scott's like, he's from Whitby. Oh, from Whitby? No. Oh, man, we're trying to like narrow it down, right? Where do you work? And he's like, I don't really work. And we're like, what's going on here, right? Back, forth. And finally, this guy looks over and says, hey, Gomer. And this guy like hands over a beer, and it's Scott Gomez, who had.
Oh, really?
Who was a great hockey player, right?
Yeah.
And so Scott and I are both like, oh, Gomer. And so we're talking to him, and he's just laughing at these two losers who were like trying to figure it out, and totally guessing wrong. Then we're hammering him because we're that kind of guys, just being real. And we're like, because it was like November, and we're like, what are you doing here in Toronto in November, drinking beer by yourself? And he's like, oh, arbitration. And we're like, oh, what's going on? And he's like telling us his whole story for like 10 minutes about arbitration, how he won the Rookie of the Year, and he wants to get this, and we're like, and Scott's a pretty funny guy, and he's like, oh, what are you asking for? He's like, I'm asking for $5 million, and Scott's like, and like he's like, 3 maybe, and that kind of like quick joke kind of helps Gomez bring his guard down, so he's laughing, and so we're going back and forth, and he was negotiating.
It also shows you're educated. You're not just guys saying shit.
Right, exactly, right. So we're not trying to like just be fanboys. Anyway, so we talked to the guy for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. He bought us 3 or 4 beers, but just one of those kind of examples of like, he's there. That's real life. Like, he's there not playing. People assume but he's there going to the courtroom the next day to defend why he's a good hockey player, despite holding a trophy that says he's the best rookie of the entire year. But yeah, all these people who are celebrities or athletes, they have real lives they have to iron out too.
Yeah, that's not necessarily your role, right? As a management company, some of those contract negotiations, especially in like a sport like hockey, but everything you hear is some of those negotiations can be like horrendous. Like, they don't want the clients there.
Yeah. Oh, they're bad. Like, they talk about how like they'll show every error they made in baseball. Like, well, your client had 47 errers.
Yeah. Let's look at them.
Let's look at them all in a row. Just like it's like a highlight reel of errors. But those things sound ridiculous, and that world is a different world for sure. I think they'll probably kill me if I say this, but I think it's easier. I think it's like that world is kind of like it's just almost like real estate, just comparables. So you're showing comparables all day and being like, and then like they all like get all pumped up when someone gets a great contract that they can compare their client to, and 35 goals and so and so and so and so and whatever age and whatever. And I don't dive into that space obviously as much. I've got a couple of clients that I do contract work for, but not to the same level of that somewhat nonsense.
Well, you're going out into the world to find opportunities, right? And like, tell me if I'm wrong here, right? But like with a typical sports agent, they're working with a team or a league, sign a contract, get that sorted, and then they probably do some of what you do as well on the side. But what you do is you're like, all right, you do your sport thing or your whatever it is you do, and I will go find added value for you.
Yeah, it's actually been a bit of a trend that you've seen people like Vladimir Guerrero has just signed up with a company out of Calgary to do his off-field deals. Okay. His agent might be from Dominican Republic, who might just want to do his deal, has no idea who Canadian Tire is, or who, you name it, the big banks are, who might be a Vladimir Guerrero, sponsor. So they've hired. So we may do some of that down the road a little bit, where you might get somebody, you cross paths with that is a great player for the Raptors or for the Leafs, not really, but Raptors or a Jays type thing, where they become a bit of a celebrity around town, but they have an American agent who all they care about is getting their percentage off that giant, massive contract, and they're not really trying to find, deals that are sizable with a Canadian company,
Yeah.
because
Like
for them it's like,
Loblaws or whoever,
yeah,
right?
yeah, which is what we kind of do more of. I guess a little more niche, but those I think those deals, truthfully, I think our deals that we do are harder to get done. I think getting Vladimir Guerrero's contract ironed out is pretty easy stuff, but easy
Because
to
you're
easy.
just saying this is
Never,
what.
it's never easy, but it's just there's quite a few parameters in there to kind of like, he's on their team, they're going to pay him. What's the number? It's like, you have a house, it's worth X. I want to pay you Y. Let's figure out where X and Y
Supply and
meet.
demand, right?
Right. So I think yeah, there's different variations of what agents do for sure.
I find your industry or what you do is super interesting to me because like some of the guys on your roster, right? So John and Jennifer's teams, Gerry Dee even. For a lot of Canadian athletes, Canadian personalities, they need something extra to make it a career, right?
Totally.
Like you enable people to do some of these things as a career, and I think as obviously COVID has put a wrench in a lot of it, but I think that's what a lot of these personalities are going to do. If you want to stay in Canada as a comedian, for sure, as an athlete in curling, if you want to be a full-time curler, it can't just be curling. If you want to be a comedian in Canada, it can't just be comedy. You need these secondary sources of income, which your industry provides that. And I didn't really think about it that much until John started talking to me about it, but it's a very important role in the cog of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that they hopefully talk about us that way, and for John, it's, they still have to play. I can only sell what they do and who they are, right? So if John and the team don't play very well for the entire year, sponsors are kind of looking at you like, hey, what's happening here? But it's nice when they play well. It's the power of winning or being successful is massive, and people knock on the door pretty hard when people are successful. But for them, it's, we don't always wish we can do more for them. It's just trying to help them get a few more bucks, or find a way to help their brand get bigger and stronger, promote them more. And for curling, it's been stuff like trying to have longer term deals. So for a lot of these curling teams, they do 1 year deals, and they don't know how to structure it properly or write it up properly, or just they're busy playing. So like if they're busy playing, it's nice when I can text with the sponsor and be like, oh, make sure you tune in tonight at 8 p.m. to watch. It's going to be on a national TV game tonight. I'm like, oh, thanks for telling me, Jeff. Whereas to get John to do that between games is kind of like,
No, he's trying to get some food in him before he gets back out on the ice.
Oh yeah, and they're focused. Like it's for real, right? We have a group chat going on, and I send them things when they're playing and then when they're winning and when they're losing too. But you pick your spots where I probably shouldn't text right now, or you kind of give us some breathing room, whatever. But they've been great to me. Like they make me feel part of the team, which is nice, and yeah, it's fun to be a part of.
So you've got all these different genres now, and you've talked a few times, said you're busy and you've got your contacts out in the world too. But when I don't even know how to say, when you're approached, or if you've crossed paths with someone, how do you identify someone that you want to work with? Like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think we're kind of spoiled now. I think if you asked me this 3 years ago, it'd be a different answer, but we're a bit spoiled now with having these.
The bar keeps raising.
Well, yeah, and you have these great clients that have just worked out that way, and now when you look around and figure out, okay, who are on the same page, and there's very few, which is why they're so unique. That it's and again, it's back to like, what's the business model for both of us? If it's like, hey, I think I can help you out to make some more money or have some great partnerships, and which will help me out. But if it's like, I don't really see it, and they don't see it either, it's kind of, we have to both see it to kind of see the desire to want to do more than just what they're doing. If you want to pursue speaking engagements for Natasha or for Jaina, or for, hopefully they want to do it, and then
they have to want to do it. Yeah,
want to do it and be good at it.
Yeah,
right, and be up there and be on stage, and now today's going to be an event for a charity, tomorrow's going to be an event for an auto union, like things that are not really in their wheelhouse, but they have to go there and speak about themselves, which isn't always what they do. I mean, they're really good at what they do, but typically it's not about, like, typically it's like Jennifer Jones it's a phenomenal curler. She's very good at speaking about her journey as well, but it's sometimes weird for people to speak about themselves. They're not good at doing that.
Well, she's a lawyer too by trade, right? So I think that helps.
it's got a few tools in the toolbox there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, like I said, if you asked me a few years ago, I might be trying to get more people to get to the people I have now. But I kind of started at the top there. What I got lucky, where you've got the Gerry, you've got the Duthie, and you've got the Natasha and Jane, and like all these people who are phenomenal. That's kind of helped us. That now, we're not really on the prowl for anybody else. If they come up, and I think the biggest, people are always surprised that I don't have any other golfers, just from the golf background. But golf's tough. I mean, the guys who do it and girls who do it to sell for them, and I know a lot of them. It's tough. I mean, if you look at some of the golfers, some of the golfers, or the best golfers in the world who are Canadian, are probably on TV last year for 25 minutes total.
Yeah.
Total.
So that's what you're selling. You're selling 25 minutes.
Yeah. Now you get more into appearances and corporate outings, and which is kind of raising the bar. But if you're selling TV time alone, Epping was on TV for 35 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jennifer Jones on TV for pushing probably 50 hours.
Are you selling something in a week in March? Because he'll be on TV twice a day, every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is when people kind of eyes go, whoa. And I'm just the kind of guy who I don't want to take somebody on who I can't get stuff done for. I don't want to, not that I can't face the music, but I don't want to lead somebody on and be like, take them on and they feel like they're part of the program, which they will be. But then all of a sudden a year later being like, hey Jeff, where's all my deals? And I'm like, well, I told you it'd be a tough sell anyways. Like I'd rather not bring them on. And then if somebody calls me and says, hey Jeff, do you have a golfer? And I said, actually, here, I can pass you off to so-and-so's agency, or that person has no representation. I'll just call them directly and say, guess what? Great news. I got a deal for you. That fell right in your lap, and then they're happy. So yeah, we're not really trying to get any bigger. If someone happens to pop up that's phenomenal, then we'll look at it and see if it fits in. But we're super happy where we are right now for sure.
And obviously your focus is sports. That's why I kind of find Gerry Dee interesting, because he did the Score and he obviously did the sports reporter thing. But one of these things is not like the other in your client list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but his sports background is so big, right? I mean,
100%. He's done
funny,
some fan morning show stuff a while back too, I think, if I remember right.
Oh yeah, and then if you've watched recently, we've done the deal with them with the NHLPA, right? So NHLPA,
is that how that golf thing went down? Is that what that's from?
That was an event that's one of our events, our company managed. So that event brought together a bunch of clients, right? Where we've got, TPC Toronto golf course is a client of ours, right? Yeah. And then, obviously James and Gerry play. They're both clients of ours. Kyle Dubas and I are great friends, for the last 15 or so years. And so it all kind of came together, in a hurry. And some people didn't know the whole story. We're kind of like, what is happening here? Like why this golf course? Why these people? And, the common theme was me in the middle there. But anyway, but Gerry, so like the NHLPA thing, Gerry has his skill set and they wanted to do something different with some funnier interviews and bring back Sports Reporter a bit. So we've been filming those once a week last little while. And, Gerry, they could probably track down Gerry if they wanted to, but I know the guys there quite well. And so that whole thing got moved a lot faster when they talked to me, talked to Gerry, and all of a sudden we all got together and said, this sounds like a good idea. And the plan was it was going to be pre-COVID. It was going to be, us going to the All-Star game and like back to in-person, some really funny stuff. And the Zoom ones have been great too. And people are really enjoying those, which is nice. And I think you'll see after this, hopefully we'll renew, and next year we'll do some things in person if we can do those. And that's when Gerry really thrives. But yeah, Gerry originally was just me helping Gerry with more sports things, right? He's a great golfer and we've done a bunch of golf things with him as well. So I think for him, a lot of sports events have big galas and have big fundraisers.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
And so Gerry, being a smart guy, Gerry kind of thought, what, Jeff's contacts in this space, he might be able to help me and vice versa. And it's been great where now someone wants to have him as a host, and I'm happy to offer him.
Yeah.
And they're thrilled to get him, and we all win.
Yeah, it's such an interesting world. It's one of those things that, as the layman, right? Like you just don't think about it. You don't think about why James Duthie is talking at a charity event this week. You don't understand, you don't put all the pieces together of how that came together, or why. I mean, a Nike swoosh is on a certain player's shirt, right? It's not just because he put on a Nike shirt that day. Like all of that stuff is pre-planned, and someone has to do it. And for a lot of these people and a lot of these Canadian type icons that we look at that you represent. It's you, and it's interesting how it's come so naturally just from, you know, having a bunch of contacts from years of work.
It's funny. And I always laugh because, again, back to my pal there, Scott Pritchard, we ran an event, which is now called the Corn Ferry Tour, which is a funny name, but the Corn Ferry is the step below the PGA Tour. And we had an event in Canada that the PGA of Canada ran. And so we did it. And I remember they hired one of these players to do a corporate clinic. And the player had an agent there. And it was kind of raining, and they got hot again. So the player took his jacket off and threw it at his agent. And the agent kind of like caught it, and like the rain goes across his face off the jacket, like the little speckles of rain. And he's like, "Hold my jacket." And so I look at Scott, and I'm like, "Man, you could pay me to be an agent, man. Like, look at these way these guys, the way these guys treat these guys." And so fast forward, like literally 15 years later, a company hired Gerry Dee to go to this Christmas party downtown for their staff, kind of a big surprise. And so it's snowing or raining downtown, and I'm with them, and we walk into this restaurant, which is shut down for this whole staff. We walk in, and as soon as we walk in, they had a microphone right there. Like, it was pre-planned. We thought it was going to be more of like a walk-in kind of wave, whatever, but it was like walk-in and microphone, game on. And so he's kind of like lifts the jacket off, tosses it to me, and I catch it. And so I send this text to Scott. And I'm like, "Oh man, I'm that guy." And Scott's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm the guy holding the jacket." And so we're laughing that like if your ego is too big from your previous world, you're shot down pretty fast, because now I'm in places that people have no idea who I am. Like, who's this guy in the corner with the glasses on? Like, it's in golf world, I would go everywhere I went. People either had met me before, or kind of like someone would say, "Oh, come over here and meet Jeff." And it was very easy to kind of mingle because you knew everybody, or they heard of you, or whatever the story was. Or now you walk into spots and I'm at the Briar and I've got no idea who anybody is. Literally.
Yeah.
Other than the players and my team, I've got no idea who the top people are at different associations or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's fun. For me, it's fun. Some people wouldn't find that very fun. They'd be like, they'd be kind of in the corner being like, "This is awful. Like, I was somebody over in this world. Now I'm nobody over here." But
you're just learning again.
Yeah, it's fun. Like, for me, it's like, this is a blast to kind of like, I go to that with Gerry Dee, and he might introduce me to 15 different people there I'd never met before. And now I'm just kind of, it's just fun to meet people again. Right. And it's been, I think I embrace that. Some people wouldn't embrace that. They'd be sour about being the guy or girl who's holding the jacket, but I'm happy to hold the jacket. It's fun to be in these settings that I wouldn't have been in before. And I get to hear some of these great stories that Gerry details and laugh my tail off again.
Yeah. I mean, but your gig is networking and finding, remembering someone you talked to in 2004 and why they fit for your new client in 2019 and 2021, or right? Like, that's what your job is, right? So it makes sense. The more people you meet, the more opportunities there are for you, right? Yeah. Like, that's just how the industry
totally. And it's crazy how, like, social media has changed the game too, right? Where social media now, like, the amount of DMs people get is out of control.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you're there as a somewhat of a bodyguard or deflector to be like, they might forward you all these requests and you kind of go through it all. And sometimes they're pretenders where they just, "Hey, I got $10. Does anybody want it?" And you're like, "No, thanks." And so I think stuff like that. And certain, even brands, like some brands are getting, you think that they're more sophisticated than they are right now, but they're not. They'll call you and say, "Hey, you want to have your client be our ambassador?" And we'll send them a free T-shirt, or we'll send them a free whatever. And you're like, they don't need a coffee maker. They don't need a mattress. They don't need the whole mattress.
They'll make a coffee in your commercial, but you will pay them.
Exactly. Right. So like the whole like mattress world, obviously it's been changing over the last couple of years, and they all are just dying for every influencer to just say, "Hey, I got this bed. It's great. You should try it," and then send it back. I think that's one of those things where they're kind of like, "Oh, we'll send you a free bed," and you're like, "They don't need a free bed." Like, so I think there's still some of that. I think
that goes right full circle to the beginning of the conversation, and you were talking about individuals and clients. Like, that's just a company overvaluing themselves.
Totally right, and just kind of thinking, thinking that like they'll make it a talent. Like, they're used to paying an actor to be in the commercial, and they're like, "Oh, let's get rid of that spend, and we'll get an influencer, we'll give them a free bed." The problem is, some people do take the free bed, but they also find out in a hurry that free bed and those numbers that they have are probably not real, or they only get a few engagements or whatever, and they start putting a value on how much is a like worth, which is always debatable, right? That's the
whole new world now, right?
Yeah. So it's
like, people are famous for putting pictures of themselves, like literally nothing else. Just they
I know.
put a bunch of pictures of themselves.
I've had a few of those reach out, and you're kind of like, it's not my scene either. And I love that I work with people who are uniquely talented first, and
Yeah.
then influential second, I guess. But they're uniquely talented first. But it's funny where you see this, and that's going to change too. I think that influencer world's going to get blown up, and people just go, you know what, we're sick of paying money to get a few likes. No one's actually buying the mattress afterwards. Let's just figure out how to do this better than we're doing it now. And I think that's going to change too. And I think you'll see, even our company, I think you'll see we're getting more people calling us and being like, hey, you know what, can you help us navigate this whole like influencer world or sports spending where, you know, we're buying a rink board in this rink, and should we really do this, and vice versa. So we might get into that a bit more down the road too. But it's fun to be. I was that kid who woke up before school in grade school and high school, literally reading the paper, sports page. Yeah, because I'm almost 40 now. The sports page.
I'm the same. I was Sports Center though. It was still around in like the 90s.
Yeah, but we also had no cable in my house.
Okay.
We were old school. We were old school, just kind of hanging out and I guess talking to each other. But which was some days you wish you had cable. But we were sitting there and we were reading the sports paper, and I was the kind of guy who was more into the deal being done than the score of the game. I'm not sure why, just the way it was. And so it's pretty funny now looking all those years later. I didn't even know there was a sport management degree available until like last year of high school, when someone like tipped me off, and I was like, oh, maybe I won't go to marketing at whatever Guelph.
Yeah.
And I'll go to Brock for the sports management program that was 4 years. It could be a dead end, but whatever, it would be fun.
It was a good decision.
It's worked out pretty well. But
yeah, it's worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah.
So we've been going at this for a while, so I'm going to let you get back to your family. Thank you so much. It's been awesome talking to you. I love that talking to, like I said at the beginning, a Brock grad, but
yeah, for sure.
The whole idea of this podcast is it's the runners up, because Mitch and I are like bridesmaids. We're not real good at stuff, but then we get guests on that are winners that always win at stuff. And that's the whole concept. And I just love listening to your journey and where you fit in the industry. And just, yeah, thank you so much, man.
That's awesome. No, it was fun to chat with you. And if I can help you out with anybody down the road with some people that come on, you never know, right?
Yeah, it'd be great. I actually